So this is called Going to Mrs. Lawrence's class, Lois Lawrence's class. Okay, I said to my buddy Dan, what story should I read? The dead dog, the dead dad, or the dead nephew? I consider Dan to be some kind of arbiter of taste in this matter, as he has kids and I don't. Here was the dilemma. I called my friend Lois Lawrence, who's a teacher, to ask her who in the local school system might want me in their classroom, paid in pronto, before school let out for summer. My class, she said. Would you read in my class? But, Lois, my stories are all really adult, really dreary. You wouldn't want me. No, she said, I know your work and the kids will love it and you'll love the kids. Well, how could I resist? Read the bear story, said Dan. Kids love bear stories. Boy, was I getting nervous. I mean, I've had adults staring at ceilings, men fidgeting and yawning plaintively to let their wives, girlfriends, sisters know that it was a stupid idea to bring them out to my particular reading. I've been drowned out by football games and upstaged by cash registers. But kids, Christ, they can pick their noses or open their desk lids just to let you know how dreadful you are. Okay, I said to Lois, but you better be there to protect me. Don't worry, you'll be fine, she said in her best reassuring school teacher voice. If you want, come early and sit in on the kids' sharing session. That way they'll go first and you won't be so scared when it's your turn. Okay, so that was fine, I'd do that. I also asked Lois to send me some information on what the kids were studying and writing. She said the reading levels in her class of grade 3s ranged from almost no reading skill right up to grade 9. She emailed me a really helpful list that told me what the kids were working on in their writing. Conversation, detail, senses, making a problem and solution so something happens, strong action words, author's voice, similes, and more. I quickly looked up simile in the dictionary. I always mix up metaphor and simile. Okay, no trick question could trip me up on that score. The week was approaching. I was booked for Wednesday at 9 a.m. Let's put it this way. The day before my reading, I had a very unpleasant, nay, devastating phone conversation with someone who has a lot to say about my work, a lot of power over my work. I was in shock. I was sick to my stomach. I was angry. I was ready to kill, commit suicide, and quit writing forever. I was ready to shout my pain and indignation from high rooftops, to swim broad rivers for the sake of my art and its purity, etc. However, could I go read these same stupid, rejectable, pitiable stories to grade 3s the next morning? I am, however, if nothing else, a relentless Calvinist. So go I would and suffer my fate. It was only a fitting end to a shitty midweek. I marked all my pages with Post-it notes. I hauled along the original artwork for my book covers. Man, I really love show and tell. That was one of the best parts of school. And posters for reading that used the same artwork. The kids, Lois said, wanted to know more about how books get made and the marketing end of things. I like these kids already. It's been many years since I've been in a grade 3 class. About 44, to be exact. Back when Ella Mae Reams was our teacher and let us watch the World Series on TV since we couldn't concentrate anyway when it was so hot out and all we cared about was baseball. I walked into Lois's class. Well, I started calling her Mrs. Lawrence right away because that's what they do in the public school system. She took me into the staff room for coffee, but I had the jitters and I went into her classroom alone to focus before the kids came in. I wanted to get a jump start on their list of questions that were posted above the blackboard. Where do stories come from? Have you ever written a series? I guess that would be the Harry Potter question. Do you make a lot of money? Simple question, simple answer. Then the kids came in and Mrs. Lawrence was among them, and I fell in love. Great kids. They were fun and polite and warm and interested and interesting. I sat listening to them tell their stories, passing around photos in this amazing classroom just full of stimulating colors and pictures and light. I wanted to go back to grade 3. I'm sorry, Mrs. Reams, I loved you best, but now I want to transfer to Mrs. Lawrence. My turn came. I read the bear story as Dan suggested. Wow, I had them. I read about the morning I found my outside freezer open and how the smell of spices wafted up from the forest where the bear had hauled them. How my bag began snatching bags of frozen meat scattered down the staircase. How I saw the bear's coarse black hair snagged in the frost on the insides of the freezer. How I locked the freezer, and then the next night when I'm outside, oh boy, now I'm really on a roll, I become the bear, and I'm shaking that freezer with my arms, huffing and snorting in my frustration that the freezer is locked. My arms are huge and powerful, and I'm trashing the freezer. And then I'm me, outside in the field, seeing the bear on my front porch. And I'm afraid, and I'm running, and I'm crouching, and I'm playing dead and running to the neighbors all at the same time. The story ends. Every hand shoots up. Everyone has a bear story. This is our culture. Bears and backwoods and narrow escapes and someone who knew someone who had something to do with a bear. I can't control the onslaught of stories. Mrs. Lawrence steps in. How about if we take 2 minutes and each of you turn to the person next to you and tell a bear story? Whew, what a smart teacher. So far, so good. That was my strong action word stories. Now for a simile, or a metaphor, whatever. Just a little piece about a long drive on the prairie and bug guts smeared on the windshield like egg yolks. They like that. Kids love gore. Then I read them one about our family dog killing river rats, but being able to hold a robin so it could then fly away. Not bad. Good dog. They needed a break. So Mrs. Lawrence got them to move from their desks to the cushions on the floor. Okay, every story needs a low point. I tried the conversation sample about when we had the big family gathering with Dad and we outed him about having Alzheimer's. Well, it was a bit much for the kids. Even explaining it could happen in their families, well, it was just too tedious for them, so I definitely switched to a different topic. Then Mrs. Lawrence did this really neat thing. She got them to get up, go to their desks, and fetch their quadrant sheets. We never had quadrant sheets. And then they would analyze my work as I read. Well, they didn't all have their sheets, so we had a break while she photocopied more. She gave me one too. The sheet is divided into 4, I hesitate to say, quadrants, with headings like strong verbs, feelings, images, and senses. The kids resumed their cushions, licked their pencils, and prepared to judge me. I went for it, the tornado story. Trees crashing, houses cut in half so you could see the toilets, straws of wheat like needles rammed straight into oak trees, branches crashing down like the tines of a tuning fork. There were metaphors and similes slamming against roofs, Dad yelling at the door to let him in, author's voice all over the place. Storm clouds and fear, it was great. Those little pencils were racing, and their big eyes were staring up at me, bewitched. And then it was over. We all moved back to our desks for the cool down. We had questions about where story ideas come from, but really, the stories had answered that already, and the question was somewhat pro forma. We talked about income and marketing and book tours, all the usual grade 3 stuff. And it was time for me to leave, but I didn't want to. I wanted to stay with Mrs. Lawrence and relax some more, and she, sensing my need, said I could stay while they went over their quadrant sheets. They gave me so much. They cared about the stories of where we live. They cared about me, and they told me how they want to write books themselves. That day, I went home happy. Yes, it's true that I still felt very bad about the demoralizing conversation the day before, but I trusted these kids' judgment more. They could have lifted their desk lids, squirmed in their seats, been rude or heartless, but they weren't. They were who they were, kids who love stories, kids who love being read to, who want to become writers themselves. The next week, at the local co-op store after I gassed up and bought my groceries, a little kid came running out of the store. She ran up to me, skidded to a stop, and looked at me expectantly. "Are you Rita Moir?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm your biggest fan." I said, "You were in my class last week, Mrs. Lawrence's class." These my heart. I wrote them a thank you letter. I got a fistful back. Those wonderful penciled letters, each with a return address, each starting out exactly the same way. You can imagine Lois had handwritten my full name up on the blackboard to help them with the spelling. See, these are the kind of letters that help erase the bad days. You could say, what do a bunch of kids know anyway? I think they know lots. I think they're smart and genuine, and I thank them for believing in the magic of stories. I know the off-the-page program is supposed to help the kids by bringing professional writers into the schools. What I didn't know is how much it can help the writers. Kids' letters. And that little kid was Crystal Koziak. This is my new book that's coming out. This is the only copy so far. They're cranking out more. And there is going to be some events coming up and such. This book is called The Windshift Line, and I got the idea for this from, you know that little, not little, it's a big bookstore in Castlegar, where you have no idea how things are organized, but they are, and you go in there, and there's just the most wonderful, weird books, and if you're sort of in that space where you're open to whatever, I'm not a flaky person, but sometimes the universe just does offer you things, and this wonderful little book is called It's in the Wind. And it was produced in 1960 by the meteorologist in charge of the weather station in Halifax, Rube Hornstein. And in it I found a term about the windshift line, which is where tornadoes are made. And is Ruby still here? Yeah. You want to come up and help me with this? The windshift line is where these two fronts meet. Now, this is something, because I'm in my home audience, I get to try something and ask you to help me with it. We're going to all, because people said, what's the windshift line? We're all going to learn this together. Okay, so you need your two hands. Okay. Now, if this left hand is a storm front coming from the west, cold, heavy, put it flat, cold, heavy, okay? Now this is warm, light southern air coming from the south. These two storm fronts are going to meet, and they're going to slam together, but the light one is underneath. Ruby, yes, like this. Okay, so now your hands go and go like smack, like that, two storm fronts meeting. Okay, now this heavy air is pressing down, and this light air wants to get up on top because it's getting squashed. So your hands start struggling. and this light air comes like this. Up, and they go like this. That is the windshift line. So the windshift line is really a metaphor for struggle and change, and we all meet those, come to those places in our life, those really hard times where you can struggle and be crushed by those forces, or you can struggle and turn and come out on top. The light air comes out on top in the end. I didn't realize when I wrote this book, it was first called Wind Train Trees, because that's another lovely image. You know, the trees you see that are bent by the force of the wind, and they hold on, and they have these really gnarly roots. You see them all over the prairies, you see them on mountaintops, you see them on riversides. And they're wind train trees. The wind has trained them into a certain position. I was going to call the book that for a long time until I met that beautiful image of the windshift line, which is about being able to change during struggle and turmoil and survive. I didn't know how apt it was going to be because after I'd pretty much written this book, my nephew was killed in a plane crash in northern Minnesota with the U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone, who was one of the few progressive forces left in the United States. And then later, my father died of Alzheimer's the same year. So sometimes you make an image and then you have to go, okay, I made the image, now I better live with it and let it help me through. This piece, I want to particularly thank the Recreation Commission for the role it plays in our valley, for helping us through the long winters, for organizing events like this with Selkirk College, for what it brings in our life as a way to keep on going and be out there in the world with other people. This is called Alaman Left. Christmas 2002. This is just after William's been killed in the plane crash. Everyone was killed in that plane crash. Dan picks me up in Spokane. We stay with his relatives nearby. They could not be kinder, but I can't control my emotions anymore. All I want now is to be home, to unpack my suitcases, to grapple for some routine. Back in my own front yard, we string colored lights on an intertwined all-over view, shaping them to look like a regulation Christmas tree. Every time we round the bend toward my house, the tree is brilliant across the field. We tour back roads and city streets, seeking the brightest and strangest Christmas lights, then declare ourselves winner of the best decorated tree in the valley contest. We share intimate dinners with friends we have known and loved for decades. They know Dan and me as individuals and now welcome us together. On Christmas Eve, 22 of us sit together at a beautifully laid table. The colors of blue glass in the goblets and plates, the red terracotta of the walls, the lights twinkling in the windows, cushion me with the gentlest love. Our friend Sabian has carefully thought out the seating for this mix of old and new friends and relatives. She asks each of us to introduce the person to his or her right. Her husband Bernie introduces me, and his words of love and support are so astonishing and sweet that I can barely maintain my composure. We go round like that laughing and drinking wine and sometimes crying, our ages ranging from newborn baby to the 80s. And it is like my own large family gathered in safety and love. But it is difficult, too, to be here in Canada, in my valley, where my friends know about William's death, but where it is not ingrained in the passage of every minute of every day. In Minnesota, the story lies beneath the skin of every conversation. It is the lingua franca. Life goes on, that insipid and wrenching cliche, that horrible and wonderful truth. But daily reality is not the same. Around each corner, an accident is waiting. I attempt to control everything. I keep track of everyone I love. I make an inordinate number of trips to the grocery store. In the reliable bins of green peppers and oranges, the casual movement of people buying groceries, I find stability. I reassure myself with grocery lists, with cooking, as if a full larder will ward off death. I seek order and patterns, music and laughter. We take a class in square dancing. Our teacher, Bob Dean, is almost 80 years old. Each week he drives to the school where he once taught math, and our ragtag bunch of dancers comes to learn orderly movement and change from him once again. He calls out the Ferris wheel, where we should all revolve in pairs and fours and meet gracefully. But some of us turn the wrong way or stand blankly, not knowing what to do. Sometimes we crash into each other. Gradually we improve. This fashioning of unskilled random dancers into predictable patterns where chaos sometimes resolves into rhythm and grace soothes and replenishes me. We know the do-si-dos of the Alamans, where you reach out and take another dancer's hand and move forward around the circle in time to the music. Sometimes we Alaman left in perfect harmony, roll away with a half sachet, shoot the star, slip the clutch, and swing to a wave until we are laughing so hard the world is only this moment, this movement. For Christmas Day, we make simple presents. We bake shortbread for our friends. Dan goes to the fire in the heat of the forge and makes me a wrought iron tool for my wood stove. I enlarge and frame photos I took of him making the railings in the summer for our community hall. I ask him to join me on a phone call to my parents, an awkward way to be introduced, and I understand why he would rather wait for summer to meet them in person. But I insist. There is no certainty ever that any of us will live until the summer. We talk with my mom and dad. They are charming and charmed, and I am so happy that there is a new person, Dan, entering our family. Mostly, I can't remember words now, the topics. I just remember the mingling of voices and laughter. My father's weak voice, sometimes strong and clear. My mother's so down to earth, or repeating words to Dad that he didn't catch. There is my own voice, which is full of love and yearning for Dan to know them. There is his own, knowing what this means to me. I remember that conversation, like the sounds of ice water rippling over glaciers in the sun. Thank you very much.